Hey, y'all, welcome back to Solid Rock. We're so glad that you could join us today. And today we're going to be talking about this really incredible thing called influence. And if you're here with us online, you know what influence is. We let things influence our lives, whether it be big or whether it be small, and they determine our steps. They determine our directions. And whether it be an influence that is tiny that gets us distracted or something that is big and impacts the rest of our lives, all of those things can combine to really tear us in different directions. So we have to be so aware of what influences us and where it's coming from and what it's doing in the long run. We have recently, if you have internet anywhere as well, you know that Texas has recently survived a very devastating storm. And when I was watching the footage of that, it really brought me back to about a year ago in September of last year in our area, um, you know, the northern part of South Carolina and western North Carolina. We had a devastating flood. And I can remember when we were helping the people in that flood, the first thing we were loading is cases of water. Water is very influential in our lives. It's something that we have to survive. It is the probably the next thing is oxygen. Is going to be the shortest thing we can go without. It's so essential for our lives. I'm watching this storm and this devastation, and we're loading cases of water onto this truck to take to the people who are in need of it for the victims of this flood. And at the same time, the thing that is drowning them is the thing that they need most. The thing that is absolutely destroying their homes, their lives, their families, their jobs, their community is the same exact thing we're loading into trucks to take to them. And so what's the difference in that? It's what that water contains. Is that water going to give you life or is it going to destroy everything in its path? Because it can do both. And it's not just the storms in the life that in our lives that influence us. The people in our lives that influence us so much. Sometimes we don't even realize the influence people have, whether it be great or whether it be small, until the influence that occurs from it, whether it be damage or whether it be good, is done. We don't even see that we're being influenced until we've realized the end of it. So that's why we have to be so careful. It reminds me of a few stories. There's a guy, in a small town. If we were kind of in a small town and football is king here. Coach D was just a high school football coach, but man, he was there for 10 years. He had won some championships. The town loved him. Even local preachers would look to him for guidance. Everyone thought he was just a pillar of the community. He inspired all the kids who came through, had great motivational speeches, and did some wonderful things. He was even known to buy some equipment and some gear for kids that didn't have it. But it wasn't long, about 10 years in, it started with a rumor. And then there was an investigation. And it was found out that Coach D, this guy that was adored by an entire community, had been taking money off the top from things like, the booster clubs and the sporting equipment things. And so all of the good that he had done was just drowned out by these accusations. And some people defended him and wanted everything to be great. And they just wanted to believe the best of him. And others just really felt heartbroken. But regardless, it took almost 10 years before that school got another coach that they felt comfortable with. And even he had to develop after that. What happened in this school ruined generations of children and what they could have been and the influence they could have had. It absolutely destroyed so much, not just the small bit of money that he was taking for, you know, gambling or whatever it might be. When you take advantage of your situation, you're destroying way more than just yourself. It
Mm.
can affect everyone around you and even the people in their lives. And on the flip side of that, we had in the same small town Miss Lila, who was at the elementary school. Now, most people didn't even know her name. They just called her the cleaning lady. But Miss Lila was always She was always there for everyone. If there was a kid that was crying, they somehow always found their way to her. And she had some candy in her pocket, and she would always make them feel better, make them feel seen. For the teachers, she always remembered their birthdays, had a pie baked for them. In the teachers' lounge around Christmas, she would leave little notes that just says, "I see what you do," with a gift card to show them how great they were, just anonymously. But she was quiet. Nobody really knew much about her. She didn't have any family in town. She lived close to the school, so she just walked back and forth in her little yellow raincoat every day and sat in the back of the church unnoticed. Nobody really paid her any attention until she died. But when she died, everyone was just astonished because the church was overflowing with people. The whole community came together. The mayor of the town even stood up and told a story about how when he was little, it was Miss Lila that made him feel better and made him feel like he was not alone. He had struggles at home, and it led him to be the person he was today. Other janitors from other schools, other teachers, so many people in the community came together, and there were just tears because no one realized the influence that this quiet woman had over her entire community. But she changed generations, and she did it quietly, unnamed. So our influence, we see some big influencers out there. We really do. And the ones that are the biggest ones that are well known, and it's not a bad thing to be well known, but the ones who are all about me, and I am the one that is going to lead us into this. You got to be careful with some of those influencers because what are they bringing to you? Are they bringing good water, clean water? Are they bringing things that will rescue, things that will help? Or are they corrupting, maybe even not all at one time, but slowly, the waters around you to where they're destructive and they're going to just take out everything that actually is clean? Because that's what those storm waters do. They don't just, these people had water before, they didn't need those cases. But the storm water comes in and it just absolutely destroys everything around it. And that's how our influencers work as well. And that really brings me to the scripture today that I wanted to talk about. And these women are never spoken of together. I don't know that I've ever heard anyone put them in the same sermon, but when you look at influence in the same way of, Coach D and Miss Lila, there are a lot of similarities there. We have Jezebel and we have the woman at the well. Now, Jezebel, it was said in the Bible that no man, Ahab was her husband. Please go read all of it. You can just look up all of the scripture that points back to Jezebel. Won't take too long to read it, but it's through First and Second Kings. We're going to hit on First Kings a little bit here, but there's so much about her. It talks about no man had turned his back on God so much as Ahab had. Jezebel was able to influence not just her husband, but the entire nation of Israel with her false gods, demanding that it be her way. And this is something that she brought in. And when she brought all of this in, she very much persecuted all of the Christians. I mean, this was a way of taking what Israel had built and tearing it down for centuries, even generations to come. But one of the first verses that I will talk about with her is in 1 Kings 18:4. This is when, Ahab had summoned Obadiah. There was a famine in the land. There was a drought, which kind of comes back to the water. But they didn't have anything there either, and so they summoned Obadiah, who was in charge of the palace. And Obadiah was a devoted follower to the Lord. Once, when Jezebel had tried to kill all of the Lord's prophets, Obadiah had hidden 100 of them in 2 caves. He put 50 prophets in each cave and supplied them with food and water. We're going to come back to that little piece of it in a second, but this woman was so influential that she could run the prophets out. These are the people that were revered before in Israel. What Israel had built to serve the Lord, these were the men of God. And she came in with her false gods, her false idols. She had the power, she had the influence. And here's the thing, she was beautiful. She was a princess who married a king. So this is a person who had influence from birth. She would have been raised with the expectation of how great she was or what all was she was entitled to. It was someone who was all about themselves. And she made everything about herself, she forced it and shoved it down the throats of everyone around her. And just saying she tried to kill all the prophets when they had to go and hide from her. I mean, these are men of God, and they're in hiding because they're afraid of their lives. And what ends up being prophesied about Jezebel does come true, but it doesn't mean she didn't destroy so much along the way. Now, to skip a little bit, and we'll come back to this, but the woman at the well is a very unique story because so much of that, and you can find that in John 4. We'll flip over to there. John 4:4 is where we'll start. But so much of the woman at the well is interesting. Both of these ladies could be a message all in themselves. So I will try to unpack as much as I can with it. But with the woman at the well, it says Jesus had to go through Samaria. First of all, no, he didn't. Geographically, he did not have to go. Based on where he was going from and to, there were a couple of different routes. This wasn't necessarily even the easiest, but he had to go through Samaria. That's what the Bible tells us. When he gets there, he sends the disciples out to buy lunch. Go on to lunch. He had an appointment. He meets this woman at the well, and it was a divine appointment because she she comes in around noon. It's probably around lunchtime. It'd be the heat of the day. Nobody's with her. She's alone. This is not how that society went to draw water. The women would have gone earlier in the morning when it was cooler during the day. So this woman's going alone. That speaks volumes to who she was, how she was known in her society. Not only was she not known, if she was known, she was avoided. She was going alone. And we're going to find out why when she sits down or when she approaches the well. Jesus asks, "Give me a drink." And again, in John 4, so soon a Samaritan woman came to draw water. And Jesus said to her, "Please give me a drink." He was alone at the time because his disciples had gone into the village to buy some food, some lunch. The woman was surprised, for Jews refused to have anything to do with Samaritans. She said to Jesus, "You are a Jew and I'm a Samaritan woman. Why are you asking me for a drink?" And Jesus replied, "If you only knew who you were talking to, if you only knew who sits right here in front of you, the gift God has for you, and who you are speaking to, you would ask me, and I would give you living water." Living water. But sir, you don't even have a rope or a bucket. And that's where our minds go. We don't we look at the immediate tangible. You don't have a bucket, you don't have any way to draw this water. How am I even supposed to get it for you? Tell me about this water that you're talking about. Um, you know, and besides, are you even what is this living water? And besides, are you even greater than our ancestor Jacob who gave us this well? How can you offer better water than he and his sons and the animals enjoyed? And Jesus replied, "Anyone who drinks this water will soon become thirsty again. But those who drink the water I give will never be thirsty again. It becomes a fresh, bubbling spring within them, giving them eternal life." "Please, sir," the woman said, "give me this water, and then I'll never be thirsty again, and I won't have to come here and get water." Again, she's kind of going back to the super simple of this. Hey, I don't have to come to the well every day. But what Jesus is offering her is so much bigger than that. He is offering her life, eternal life. And she's still not necessarily grasping it. She's just kind of thinking of her daily trip. Um, and I won't have to come here and get water. "Go and get your husband," Jesus told her. "I don't have a husband," the woman replied. Jesus said, "You're right. You don't have a husband. You have had 5 husbands, and you aren't even married to the man you're living with now. You certainly spoke the truth. Sir, the woman said. You must be a prophet. So tell me, why is it that you Jews insist that Jerusalem is the only place of worship, while we Samaritans claim it's over at Mount, yeah, where our ancestors worship? She said, believe me, dear woman, the time is coming when it will no longer matter whether you worship the Father on this mountain or in Jerusalem. You Samaritans know very little about the one you worship, while we Jews know all about him. For salvation comes through the Jews. But the time is coming, indeed, it is here now, when true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and in truth. The Father is looking for those who will worship him that way. For God is the Spirit, so those who worship him must worship in spirit and in truth. And the woman said, I know the Messiah is coming, the one who is called Christ. And when he comes, he will explain everything to us. Jesus told her, that's me. I'm him. That's when his disciples come back. And I very much encourage you to go and read this entire story. But this woman drops everything that she's doing. The disciples come back, wonder why he's even talking to this woman. She drops all that she's doing. She runs back to her village. And this woman ends up influencing generations to come as well. Her entire surroundings, everyone in her community. We don't know her name. All we know is that her influence was Jesus met her where she was. She received what he said to her. And once she received it, she couldn't hold it into herself anymore. This was not about her. She goes back to her village and she says, I met this guy who told me 8 sentences and said everything I'd ever done. He didn't say everything she'd ever done. He brought to light what she was possibly most ashamed of. What she was most probably the reason she was there alone. He brought it into light and he offered with it living water. He offered a rescue, even though he was bringing out what everyone else probably used to shame this woman. So she runs back to her village. She gets so excited. And again, this influenced her. It's not about her. When she goes and says to her community, I've met this man who's told me everything about myself. Could this be the Messiah? It's not about me. She's pointing everyone back to God. She's pointing them back to Christ. And she doesn't demand it. She doesn't shove it down their throat. She says, come and see. And so the story continues that her village, they all come, down to the well. And a lot of them heard what Jesus had to say. And so very many of them met Jesus that day and accepted his message. This woman who had no name came in and preached the gospel. We still don't know who she was, but we know enough of her community was changed that day that it would have absolutely affected generations to come. There would have been children and grandchildren for generations and generations that thrived under what God has in store for us, as opposed to an influencer who comes in, shoves everything that they have, and the people accept it willingly. That's the thing about influencers, is if you allow the wrong ones to sneak into your life, you are going to find yourself, even if you don't agree with them at the beginning. It's actually pretty interesting if you go in and you read a lot about Jezebel. I'd really like to circle back to 1 Kings 18:4, because there's a lot to be said about Jezebel. She came in, she turned Ahab against, she brought in her gods, she brought in her ways of worship, she brought in all kinds of rituals, and there were multiple commands on the way things had to be, people had to worship. And again, this is during a famine and a drought. So all of the people are desperate for water, specifically, food and water. And she's coming in with her prophets trying to kill off all of the people of God. And the people of God are the ones who can bring the living water, if we want to look at it that way. In fact, if you really read through everything, when this drought does finally break, that is how it comes to be, is the living water comes from the prophets, from God. So, very similar with that. But just to come back to this, meanwhile, a famine had become very severe in Samaria. So Ahab summoned Obadiah, who was in charge of the palace. Obadiah was a devoted follower of the Lord. And once when Jezebel had tried to kill all the Lord's prophets, Obadiah had hidden 100 of them in caves. We spoke about that a minute ago. Put 50 in each cave and supplied them with food and water. Ahab said to Obadiah, "We must check every spring in the valley, in the land, to see if we can find enough grass to save at least some for my horses and mules." So they were in the midst of this drought, in the midst of this person who had literally destroyed all of the good around them. These two, the influence they had was to go in separate directions and search for what was good. They went to find the water that still could be used and to gather it together for the purposes of good. So even though they are very much in hiding, even what they focus on is what is good and what is God.
Right.
Whereas what Jezebel brings to this table is the forced gods. So let's think about how our influencers influence our lives. Who would you say you listen to, see, talk to, or hear the most on a regular basis? This can be a family member. This could be a coworker or a boss. This could be a friend or a loved one. This could be some anonymous person online who doesn't know who you are. It could be a tight, close relationship, or it could be an imaginary one, depending on how you want to look at it. But who influences you? And when they bring their influence, what does that influence look like? Is it bringing you a step closer to God with the attention on God? Or is it tearing you farther from Him with the attention in directions you know you shouldn't go to? Because these people, the Israelites knew, they had been told, they had history, they knew what happened when they turned their backs on God. Yet they let this woman come in with all of her gods and allowed them, maybe slowly, but surely, to turn their backs on God. And the rain stopped. They weren't drowning in dirty water, but they certainly didn't have any living water. So, what what are the influencers that you don't realize are influencing you? Who has encouraged you that maybe wouldn't be someone that you would think of often as an influencer? Who is it that it has inspired you? Because sometimes these people are doing so much more than you know. And if
Wow.
you really pay attention and you look at the back end, Miss Lila, nobody knew her name. They called her the cleaning lady, but she made people feel seen and she made
Yeah.
people feel God. So when when these children came to her and they were crying or they were upset and she was the one they came to for comfort, she saw them even though they were young. And even though they were distressed, the beautiful part about it is she made them feel seen, but she made them feel valuable with being seen. Because you can look at somebody and definitely not make them feel seen, but they don't feel valuable with it. So no matter what somebody's struggling with, this Samaritan woman at the well, she might have felt seen, but if she did, she always felt as though eyes were judging her. And
Right.
let me say this too, we don't know that changed for her when she went back to her hometown.
Hmm.
She might very well have gone on home, and I can promise you the royalty in Israel, even when everything that was bad that happened to Jezebel, the next queen that stepped up, they would have revered her in the same way. So she would have held that same influence. But when this woman at the well went back to her town after they received Jesus, it's possible that she was seen in the same light as she was before. But I promise you, she wasn't seen in eternity the same way she was before. She made an impact on eternity and on her present actual people in her life that would last for generations. Jezebel did the same thing,
Mm.
but she destroyed what it took years and years of people of God to come together and build. It took one woman and one man of power, one power couple to come in and absolutely tear down everything that had been built up. And I know we feel that in our society today. We have to see, and this is not to say that this is a blame on one or another, but it is we have developed a society where we focus on people who we allow to influence us and we take our eyes off God. And this woman with no name put people's eyes back on God. And Jesus said, it doesn't matter where you're worshiping. It matters that you're worshiping. It matters that you're coming to me. It matters who you're worshiping. So that is what we have got to focus on. Who is it that we worship? When we allow influence in our lives, our worship is such a fragile thing. It's a beautiful thing. It's a wonderful thing. It is something you will, gosh, you can't even explain it until you feel the Holy Spirit. Worship is amazing, but all it takes is just a little bit of a pivot of focus before our worship can quickly go down a road that we don't want it to go down, and it can destroy us for years. It can destroy our children's lives. It can destroy their children's lives. And the way that we break those generational curses, if you feel like you've lived in that and you've had that life, the way you break generational curses is it starts with us. What we show our children we're willing to do to get back to where we're supposed to be is what they will grow up and do to stay where they're supposed to be, to build stronger communities for God. The opposite is true too. If we let Jezebels come in and we let them influence our lives and we let them take true control and we let them tell us what we should do, who we should worship, and how it should be, some really, really bad things happen. And I feel like we've all seen that, whether it be on a small scale or whether it be on a large scale. So whether it is a storm that has wiped out an entire community or a coach that just betrayed the community, both of those things are tragic and absolutely will take away everything that those communities have built for so many years, and it will take years to restore. But those people who aren't even seen, that could be you. All you have to do today is just speak some encouragement to someone. What would it take for you to feel what this woman in the well brought to people? Not a demanding, I know I saw the Messiah. You got to go take a look at him, or you've got to believe me. But I've met Jesus. He has come into my life. He has changed me. He has given me a new thing that is greater than I could have imagined. And I want you to see it too. You don't have to believe me. Come and see. When we bring people with us, when we share what we've seen, when we take what God has planted in us into every part of our lives, that's when you are an influence that changes not just your community, but you change eternity. And do not measure that based on what you see happening on your social media platforms, or maybe even what your neighbors are saying, but you measure that based on who you're bringing to Jesus, because that is what matters. It's not about us. Anyone who wants to be an influencer, and that's a good measurement too. If you're not sure who might be a good influence on you, is it all about them? Or is it all about others? Or is it all about God? Is it all about helping you to be the best person you can be for Jesus? I so much encourage you to go and read both of these. There's so many similarities in these stories that you don't really see when you don't read them together. But an unnamed woman changed her whole world. And a woman who demanded attention from the beginning of birth also changed her whole world. One destroyed it for generations, and one saved generations. We can all be that. Thank you guys so much.